freakish, interesting animals. Well, thank you all for participating in this, and I'm glad we were able to choose from the like we couldn't choose as a team. We were like everybody had a different answer, so I was like, I'm not gonna make that powerful decision. It's not going to be in my hands. So let me just take a moment and just kind of go over what we want to do today. We have about another hour and 10 minutes, so we hope to accomplish some things here. Usually after at 2:30, we stay on for what we call the Honeycomb Cafe, where we share any art or any things that are happening or any news or just it's more free talk and it's off camera, so off record. And so you're welcome to stay for that also, but there's like a hard end at 2:30. Um, so we done the community opening, and we also just wanted to lift up, this is the community board we've been using for this whole process. And so I did want to, let's see if I have them here. No, this was our brainstorm. Yeah, right here. So no, just kidding. I wanted to find, oh, it's in session 1. All right, here we go. Just some group agreements. And so if you signed up on the Hive community, then you would have answered these, but just want to make sure that there's a respect and inclusivity, and that we respect confidentiality and trust. That doesn't mean you can't take the wisdom out of the room. But if somebody shares something personal in a breakout room or something, that we keep it, the details to ourselves. And then collective care and accountability, and trusting the process and staying present. So get a beverage, practice active listening, get comfortable. And lastly, just seek resonance instead of comparing, contrasting, diminishing, or discounting your experience or that of others. So we just want to create a space where people are free to share their experience, and knowing that it is very different for everyone. And that's what one of our values is, our power at our intersections. So that's something that is gonna trying to find on here, is gonna make us stronger and better when we actually kind of delve into the intersections. So we have a few, I'm not sure if Megan is able to join us, but we have a few processes. So we're going to be presenting the shifting power framework. That is the framework in peace design, the process that we've developed in Activate Labs and that we use in our facilitation. And a lot of these are processes within peace design. And it's something that we put together for this. So it's a framework that is very adaptable to different contexts. So we did it specifically for the new reality and aid. And then we're gonna, hopefully Miad is able to take us through that. And then surprise Miad. No, we worked on it together, but we didn't necessarily allocate. And then we're just gonna review a little bit of what we did last week, and remapping the ecosystem, and see if we have other brainstorming ideas. Just if that's gonna be a quick run. And then we really want to kind of dig into the Petals strategic brainstorming. And the goal of the Petals is that we want to create, so these are the Petal questions, and they're going to be in like quick fire small groups in pair shared to be able to brainstorm, and then we're going to write in our answers and hopefully cluster. And the goal of this last 4 times, we kind of went through a whole process of kind of going over, first it was really looking at the emotions and the feelings, and you could go over the Canva board and like see what we did in each session. And also we have the videos on the playlist on YouTube that you could watch. And also on Medium, we have summary. So there's a lot of ways to catch up if you are new to this for the first time. But in short, we kind of took a process to looking at, what is it that we were feeling, what this was like a few days after it happened. We created a timeline, and then we looked at this reaction map, and we looked at the different access points of visionary to survivalist, or interdependent or individualist, and kind of like mapped on where are we landing, or where are people landing, and what does that kind of say about our initial reaction. So that's just a reaction. And then we looked at our values, and we worked with some values that are on the Activate Labs like emission envision page, but they're here also. And we looked at like what are values that drive this world. And so to frame this conversation of today, which is here, it's given that we have these you can look at the values up there. I don't want to spend too much time on that since we did it already, but you know, values around interdependence and around belonging and creating kind of a new structure. What we were looking at is this, and I want to pass it to Miad now to kind of walk us through it. We'd made some changes, Miad, as you can see, from what we developed, but I think it's the same spirit. So I'm going to pass it to you and to kind of walk us through and then get some reflections. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Monica. So this shifting power cycle is a summary, but also a proposal of how to understand ourselves, the different experience after the US government decided to cut funding to specific topics, to specific countries, to a specific type of organizations that are working in the humanitarian field. So this figure has four main stages, but also is a multi-layer figure. So on one side, you will find that this is like the breaking point, but also each stage can have more breaking points. So first, you'll find that there is a new reality about foreign aid, about the development and humanitarian fields, about how the decision of the US government is affecting different people in different countries, in different levels, in so many ways. And that's something that we have discussed in the previous session. So after that reality, the first moment is unraveling, trying to understand what's happening. And in this first stage, we have been struggling to control power, either that we want to retain the power as we were workers or of those organizations that were receiving the funding, or we are trying to free ourselves as organizations that were receiving that funding of the US government, but wanted to have more independency. So in this first stage, it was all about a negotiation process with different actors trying to understand and what can we do, how we can respond. The second stage, after trying to understand unraveling the new reality, we have had to accept this new reality. So we have had a moment of recognize those things that have the effects of the funding, the effects of not having any more this funding, and adapting ourselves. This has also a moment of being aware of that power that was hidden, or that power that was untapped. And in this moment, we have also tried to repair, to heal, to reckon, and try to adapt to this new reality. So after these two stages, we have been through a new process of imagining and co-design a new world, a new power dynamic, a new way of doing and seeing things. So we have been trying and pushing for building a new power. And in this moment, in this stage, we have built or we're pushing for a transformative relational culture between how we see funding, how we see aid, how we can be involved and create more solidarity. But also how we can build a new power agenda in terms of changing what it hasn't worked and improving what it has been working but should be different. And this goes to a final stage of transforming that reality. That started as, okay, we have a new reality, we have to accept it, we need to understand it, then we need to accept it, and we can imagine a new world. And in this transformation, it's about organizing a new power, being transforming this world, but also be resilient. In this organizing process, what we need is collective action and mobilizing different resources, not only funding, but also human capabilities, skills, relationships, how we can put together all this knowledge, all these people, and and transform the entire dynamics of power, of how one country can be, one country, one organization, one worker can have a new position in their lives. That's pretty much this new framework that we want to share with you in terms of assuming, to trying to understand what has happened in these last weeks, and continues to create a new challenges, but then how we can respond. And that's the final stage, no? How we can organize ourselves to transform and to create a new reality based on this breaking point that started with the foreign aid coming from the US. And I will hand it back to you, Monica. Thank you.
Gracias. Yeah, so I think the question for you all, or the provocation, and I want to open up the mic and open up the room, but is and we'll spend a few minutes on this, but is our provocation is that we can't move towards organizing new power in a real way unless we go through the stages fully, right? Unless when we're negotiating with power, whether, we're resisting, or we're in denial, or if we're there, we can't move. And then once we could only move once we like walk these thresholds, right? Like, so you can stay in the liminal space, but knowing that you're going to walk the threshold. So if you're still struggling to retain the system that's there, then it's hard to also build the other part. That's the provocation. That's, it's a theory, it's a hypothesis. And so, yeah, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Where are you at? Where are you seeing movement? And the mic is open. So whoever would like to, I guess the stage is open. Whoever would like to pick up the mic is open. Kyle, you look like you're fidgeting, like maybe right. Oh, there you go. See, I
Yeah,
can
I'm
tell the body
trying
language
to
here. So,
scoot closer. Good
so video
energy read.
helps. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for this. I have a lot to digest from the previous sessions that I missed, and so receive any of this knowing that. So lots of gratitude for the space that you're creating and everybody's efforts. So, I'm a coach and I lead teams, and there are a lot of things. And so what I often look at within models like this is what's getting in the way of the thing we want, right? And so here we are taking stock of it, and this is where we want to go. And we are in this fundamentally creative time because everything is, like you said, burning. We're dismantling, and so it's unleashing a lot of energy, creative energy, which can go in kind of constructive and destructive ways, based on how it's held, and also to the extent that we're doing our own work in the process, because we're also perpetuating and projecting onto things a lot of our own integrated stuff. And so I guess for me, there's the layer of the individual and what the level of integration we're doing as an individual to contribute to something that is actually restorative and transformative versus sort of generating the same old patterns. And then, so that's the internal, and then the external is just systemically what is getting in the way of the thing we want, structurally, systemically speaking. And so that comes to this bigger idea of transformation. If we can do the deep visioning and imagining work, the step I often see lacking, not from your model, but just from people, is like, okay, but what's getting in the way of the thing? Like, what are we continuing to do consciously or unconsciously that's preventing us from getting the thing we want? Because the outcomes that we have, the externalities in life right now, are by and large things that we accept that we all don't want, and yet we're continuing to do the things that are creating these negative externalities. And it's like complex meta crisis. And I think for me, it ultimately is situated in the inner development that's like the missing ingredient of the external development and transformation.
Mm.
Just a few
Yeah,
thoughts in the
yeah,
beginning.
thanks. I really appreciate that. One thing we were talking about was that like the awareness of untapped power, like that was something that this is something we could have had. We didn't need this crisis, right? And that resonates with me. Like this is just we got to a point where we had to make a decision, right? We had to negotiate with power. But this is something that, many here and many have said that, they've been discussing, how to change things in aid. But now we're here. So let me pass it to Yvette. Thanks for raising your hand.
Sorry.
Yvette, yeah,
There.
there you
Hi. I'm gonna lower
go.
my hand there. Yvette Murphy. I'm calling in from Chicago, Illinois. And just I've been in a lot of conversations. And to your point about what's being negotiated right now, it's really interesting because in my space, definitely there's a lot of people who have a lot of institutional knowledge, um, and this and have been a part of within what was the existing system, had literally over decades really pushed for it to be more inclusive. So, and so there's definitely this where I'm finding where people are in a place of grief, mourning, worry, uncertainty, still holding on to those systems that are being dismantled, and recognizing that there is this energy that exists to do something. And I've been in just a variety of conversations where that energy to do something is to duplicate what they know, and I mean just kind of psychologically we know that that's a safe place to be, right? And to ensure that the progress that they had been such an integral part of um doesn't get lost, yet also recognizing and being able to problematize the power dynamics that have been enabled, sustained, etc. And so I really appreciate to all of you the space that you're creating here, because where in those conversations I start to bring up is, okay, yes, like it's not to invalidate, for many people, obviously it's very personal, it's very existential, but but also these are people who have been really strong advocates for a world that is able to mitigate, minimize, eliminate these power dynamics, and say to them, okay, what you contributed, valid, but if you can dream, if you can just clean slate it, what could this look like? And I've been sharing, what's happening here, and that's what this is, right? So I guess I don't know if I'm really saying anything other than acknowledging that there are a lot of people who are struggling with letting go of the systems because they are
Mm,
so invested in them. And
mhm,
the energy is going to, how do we and whether they are aware of it or not, how do we transfer and perhaps duplicate, and with a hope of it being different, but essentially it is just maintaining a system that
mm,
they know. So
mm.
that's
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you. That's, I want to three more people want to share?
I can jump in really quickly, kind of in response to that, and also to your provocation. I think that very notion of struggling to let go means that we tend to sit in that first quadrant. And I think that this is the case for for any crisis. It's most convenient or comfortable to, even though it's very uncomfortable, and maybe this goes back to what Kyle was saying, like we tend to do what we don't want to do. We don't want to be uncomfortable, and yet we sit in this place of unraveling because we can't accept, and then we can't move on to dream and to clean slate it. And I think it's maybe part of our human condition, but how we then would negotiate back to create something that the power structures that we know maintain themselves. And so I personally believe that your provocation is true, that we need to go through this cycle. And so it takes this reckoning, repair, healing, and an ability to imagine co-design before we can get to transformation. So I think that's why this is incredibly exciting in the midst of a very difficult time. But I see it all around me. I mean, aside from this particular issue, but I think that it's very common for us just to sit in that first quadrant and be stuck there. Anyway, so thank you.
Thank you. Sanjay?
Yeah. For me, it's not so clear that this is a cycle. I think well, I'm seeing the perspective of the people I work with here in Colombia, and I think it's much more messy and no, it's not like a step you go from one to the other one to the other one to the other one. I think what you do is you end up jumping from one to the other depending on your on where you are and what is your level of involvement. I also think the question around what this makes me think is like the whole idea behind the concept of aid being the way to fix what we see that is broken around us. And that's where I see the awareness of untapped power. Maybe it's not awareness of untapped power, it's sort of trying to kind of understand the system. And I say it like that because I'll give an example. I don't know if it makes it, if I'm understanding this right, but I'll give an example is when I see the problem of aid, I see it's like you're trying to fix something that you broke, but with the crumbs of what you were breaking it with. And I have to say, for example, I could not do the work that I've done here in Colombia if it weren't because of foreign aid, right? Because it's like this is something that our local governments should be doing, but at the same time, the funding, the amount of money needed to do these kind of things is tough. And then at the same time, I think now that it's not there, it is possible for us to decide what it is that we want to do in the way that we want to do it. So it's the question is also then where do you get the money to do that, and where do you get the networks to do that? And so I think what is interesting in what you're showing here is trying to create a understanding of something which in the experience, for example, I don't know if you build new power or if basically what you're doing is you're reorganizing and like I understand the organizing power, but I don't know if it's new. That's my question. I don't know if I think, yeah, I don't know. It's like something new has emerged, or it's just what we're trying to do is understand that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I'll let others reflect on that. I think we have Sherry. I don't see the, yeah. Lakshmi, I think you're first, and then Isabel.
Thank you. I think what or the community I'm part of is experiencing is it's, as an organization, unraveling is probably a part of the way we all grow. Small bits of unraveling happens. But I think what's kind of, I think the opportunity here to internalize and move through these stages is systems are unraveling. So it's not just an organization, but actually ecosystems are unraveling. And I think that's I'd like to see how that applies on the frame. It's versus an individual. Sorry, my dog's barking. I'll stop.
We couldn't hear your dogs, but
Okay. So I think there's a nuance here that I'm trying to kind of hear and see how that's different when your entire ecosystem is unraveling, right? Like all your peers, your community is all, this is such a massive shift versus one funder dropping you or somebody else. We've all felt a level of aid being pulled off. But what we're seeing here is, I think, something we've never seen at a scale of unraveling. So what is that? Where's that dynamic in this? Would be interesting, I think, for me to see where that thing is happening, right? Like, so there are people who are straddling this. There are some people who've gone to the third or fourth quadrant, but this is all happening as an ecosystem.
And just before Isabel, I'm gonna thank you so much, Lakshmi. So Sharon from the chat says negotiating because of the fear of change and the possibility that it could just go back to the way it was, which had a false sense of safety and control. From the perspective of donors and NGOs. And Sarah says, agree that moving through this process is important. Within that, I think it's important to list and face the fears of moving beyond what we already know at each phase. Yeah, Isabel?
Thanks. No, so something that Sanjay was saying that it made me think of something. I don't know if this has ever happened to anybody who writes, but sometimes if I'm writing something and I start off from a certain sentence and then like I'm sort of losing the train of thought of the idea that I'm trying to express, I have to like delete the whole thing and start from scratch, right? So as you're saying, like, I have to delete the whole paragraph. Like I can't see other words other than like a blank page so I can say this one thing. And so to your point, Sanjay, about, you know, trying to rebuild something from the crumbs, I tend to go in a more sort of like on a different side or a different sort of, I don't know how to explain it, but like a different way. And so for me, when I think about this moment where we're talking about unraveling ecosystems and the whole system and everything, so rebuilding with the existing models obviously is not ideal. And so for me, the provocation is, what does a space we own look like? Like, what do our communities, what does our space, like our sector, our intervention, what does it look like if we own it? You know, those of us who are directly impacted by it, what does that space look like if we own it? And so one of my biggest things that I write about is, you know, I always say that, you know, those who define the problem, define the solution, they own the solution. So what happens if we define the problem and then we own that solution? What does that look like? So your provocation provoked me.
I like that. Yeah, that's one. That's one of our processes in peace design is called naming, and it's from Paulo Freire's. You know, the people with the power to name the world have the power to change the world. And so many times, the naming of the issue is an external naming, you know, in our work. And so then it's like, here's a problem I just thought of. You don't know how to fix it. I have an answer and money. Let's do it. And so it's like, wait a minute, like we need to take 10 steps back. And like, did did we have the same, and in co-design and in, in design thinking, it's always, that's what people centered is. It's actually like centering on the user experience. Like what are the people, the end, users gonna go through to, like, what is their experience to be able to model it. Well, on that note, I'm gonna keep going, so that we have some time for the other processes. But we started this ecosystem map, and so what we were working as a team to kind of think of like what are the 4 things that, or what are things you need to build people to people collective action for global solidarity. And like what are big containers, right? And so we thought of, the analogy of a car ride, like a road trip. So if we're gonna go on a road trip, we're gonna, I have a car, I have gas, my car is working, maybe I have some pocket change for some food, but I have the funding and resources, right? Like that's something that I have. But now I want to know like where I'm going. Like, just having a car and a gas doesn't take you anywhere. You have to have a destination. So the where is the power building agenda, right? The idea of building people power, the building a different type of power. So having a political analysis, having an understanding of how I guess, as Sanjay said, like understanding how the system, right? And understanding and I would say like making a value judgment of how the system and who, where power should sit and how power should run. So having that as our destination. And then, you know, we want to pull out the map or put up the GPS. And so we got to know like how we're going to go there, right? So we could go there by ourselves, we could go there um, together, we could go there in different ways. And so then that's where collective action. So the collective action is the map, right? Are we going to take the scenic route? Are we going to go through the city? Are we going to get lost? So that's the collective action that we're deciding that we're gonna do it collectively. And then the final component is, once we have, the people, so we're doing collectively, so we're not going to be alone in the car. I'm going to invite Whitney and Sanjay and Isabel and Mier, and we're all going to go together. So now it's the transformative relational culture. And it's looking at like, are we going to share driving, turns? Are we going to put, share music, or is it just going to be, one person's taste? Are we going to stop every time Mier, wants to get something to drink? Or are we going to be like, suck it up, buttercup, and, we're going to keep going? Like what, how are we going to treat each other on the way? Are we going to give each other grace to sleep when they're tired? And so the transformative relational culture really can like make it or break it, right? Because I don't want to be with a big jerk in the car, right? Or somebody yelling at you, or somebody that's like a dominating person in the car. Like that's not a wonderful. So each of these can almost, if you don't have a destination, then okay, we're in a car and we have people. I mean, you could go cruise, but that's going to only, take you so far, and you're wasting, resources on that. So you need a destination, and you need to map it out. And so that these are kind of the 4 components. So what we did was we did some brainstorming on what can be held in these kind of in these circles. So like for power building, we started brainstorming on different ways of doing the political education, or of building that power building agenda, learning it, whether it's personal agency or education um, or actions. And then we looked at collective action, where we looked at ways that collective action happen or can happen. And then we also looked at transformative relational culture. So that was, it's not just values, but it's more of like mindsets and ways of being together. Um, and that, just this can be a big change from the system, right? And then funding and resources. So we were looking at it as not only just, money, since that was the biggest shift, right? The only thing that changed right now is money. stopped, right? But all the impacts, right? If it was just money that stopped, then we shouldn't have any problem if that was the only thing that was in control. But obviously that money came with a lot of strings and a lot of, expectations and a lot of constructs and structures that now need to be reconstructed. And this was built, I don't want to do this too, but we did kind of go through this last time that, and so we mapped out the ecosystem, and you could look at it if you have more time, of how the ecosystem, and we were looking at like how money and usually like power flows, right? So it kind of goes up, where Jessica last time really presented this case of like there's so many places that it stops before it gets to the end user. And in each of these places, there's also a design process of, how the money and other overhead and other needs and other things that need to be met. And so lots of these, when it's not direct, and it's not necessarily the answer is like direct funding, but when resources and funding are kind of traveling through so many hands, it's hard to make sure that we're all on the same page. And that's what got lost. So when we're imagining a new system, which we kind of through our process the last 4 weeks have really landed on this idea of people to people collective action for global solidarity. And so this brainstorm took us to, and I'm sure there's a lot of contributions we can add, but I think we can just put them directly into the Petals process. And so the Petals process is a participatory strategic planning process that we use, and we like really use like papers that are in different flower petals. And basically how it works is we do this in concentric circles when we do it live and in person, when you do a piece design lab. But here we're just going to do breakout rooms in pair share. And so they're pair shares, it's dialogue. So you're having a discussion, answering the question together. And it's like just 3 minutes for that. So it's a quick share, just answering that question and talking about it. And then after the pair share, or even during, on the right here, there's a lot of different boxes. You could pick whatever box that's not being used, or it could be the group number you're in. And you just fill in one line for every idea that came out. So what would it look like if we would create people to people collective action for global? What would it look like? So maybe it looks like coaching, or maybe it looks like helping somebody write a grant, or maybe it looks like a big organizing a move. Whatever you talk about in your group, just write one idea per box. And so we'll go through each question. So these are rapid, like speed dating processes. Then when we're done, if we have time for this, if not, we'll do all the moving things around, and then we'll be able to have this open, or we could do it the last half hour. But the goal is afterwards is we will have all of the, for example, all the answers from number 1 on Petals, and then all the answers for number 2 on the same, petals of the same color. Number 3, number 4, number 5. And then the goal is to cluster. So the clusters are not going to be, just by the answer. It's not going to be like, okay, here's all of our beneficiaries, because we're going to also have, what resources or people do we need? And so it's going to create new clusters, what new ideas, right? So if there's a lot of like comments about youth, whether they were the people we need or their beneficiaries, it doesn't matter. Then we can write it, we can cluster those together. And so this kind of helps us reframe these kind of very rigid question and answers to think about the different, be they like who, what, where, when, why, right? Because this is answering strategic questions. And so with this, basically what our goal is to be able to develop some kind of concrete, if we were like to plan a co-organized project or solution to this, we would have a who, what, where, when, why to insert. And perhaps we could develop like 20 different ideas from this, but we have the ingredients to be able to cut and paste and put them in. rather than, you know, it kind of being more vague. And so it's an open, so it's a like this is a like divergence, convergence process, like design, piece design is, or design thinking, I would say. And so the goal that we have after this process that has been, you know, in the last month, is to launch a piece design lab process. And so that will be much more focused uh, with a smaller group where we will actually co-design. So we've diverged, converged, diverged, and now so we'll diverge again on one specific challenge question. So if we say, like, if we could create a people to people collective action for global solidarity, that looks like this, with this group, in this place, blah, you know, on this platform, then what would it look like? So then that process would be much more specific. And that's something that, you know, that we're excited about, because then that's very tangible and actionable, that that either we can all be a part of, or, you know, different people can take on. And so what we'll do now is we're gonna I'll keep sharing. And so I'm gonna need some help here with and I'll read sorry about the chat. We'll read them in a minute, but I know there's some anxiety about breakout rooms. I think most people have survived. Nobody has died in a breakout room um, from not from breakout room causes. And so I think just like stay strong. Uh, I'm sure everybody will be nice. And so it's just 2 to 3 minutes, and we'll close out the room and then just write, and then we'll go to new pairs. And so we'll go in and out, in and out. And see, they're already dropping off. Don't be anxious, people.
Moni, before we break up the rooms, I want to read some comments that
Thank you.
are
Yeah.
in the chat. So
Yeah.
Sharon said negotiating. Sorry, I just missed the message. Sarah Block said, agree to moving through this process is important. Within that, I think it is important to list and face the fears of moving beyond what we already know at each phase. And Sanjay was asking for the RFP. Sharon might suggest that is request for proposals, just for checking that's the meaning of that acronym. And some people have had to jump off the meeting, but then once again, this Canva, this share space will be is being recorded. It's also there will be also at the end like a summary in the blog of Activate Labs. Also, there is this Canva platform, so you will have access to all these materials. So don't worry if you need to jump up in a minute. Thank you.
Monica, we can't hear you.
I said, sorry, I was like, let me do the breakout rooms if I remember where to do them. I'm like, here, I'm going to stop my share because it seems like I need to have the full. Yeah, here we go. All right, so we have 12 people, so we'll do 5 breakout rooms. And we will I'll just put you in there for 2 to 3 minutes. I'll shut it down at 2 minutes, and then actually I'm gonna do 6, and yeah, I'll do 5. Okay. And then we'll bring you back in and we'll ask the next question. So the first question is, if we created a people-to-people collective action, global solidarity concept, you know, what would it have in it? What would it look like? And now you are invited to join. So you could, and then just pick up one of these boxes here. So there's 5 rooms, and so just go into one of the boxes and fill it out. It could be your room number. That would be great, because those will change. All right, there you go. So Mia, I think you're with Isabel. ¿Puedes ir allá? There you go. And it's just Let me share my screen to be able to, we're going through these questions now. So we're basically working with this question: if we could create people-to-people collective action for global solidarity, what would it look like? And in small groups, they're answering it and filling in. We have different boxes by the room number, and people are just picking a box that's not filled yet. And then we'll go to question number 2, which is who would benefit? And 3, and they're just 2-minute, like, rapid fire discussions. And people are back. All right, how was it? Was it too fast?
A little bit.
Okay, all right, so we'll try 3 minutes for the next one. All right, the next question is, and we have Fiona that has just joined us. She's been in other calls, so she's familiar with the topic. And who would benefit? If we created people-to-people collective action for global solidarity, who would benefit? Maybe take a minute to write in, 2, 3 ideas that came up for, if you didn't get a chance. That'd be great. And I will open up the rooms again. Let me recreate. Okay, and you're off. Isabel, I think Fiona's waiting for you, but Mia, do you want to go there? Or let me move. Oops. Yeah, I'm gonna try something crazy. I'm broadcasting to all the groups. Make sure you're naming specific groups. Not individuals necessarily, but it could be if that's somebody, but like specific demographics, not ideas. And everyone is not a group. But also non-human species or nature is a demographic. Welcome back. Was that long enough?
Still
People-
short.
It was too, well, you came early, so not too short. This is supposed to be rapid prototyping, not intensive dialogue for the future. So we're just doing rapid fire because I these are all answers I'm sure you know. And we're gonna do collective wisdom. All right, next question is what are the resources or people we need to do this? And again, let's be specific as far as money, project planning, platforms, whatever you might think of. Very specific. All right. Yeah, now you're in group 5, I think. Yeah. And Mied, you're in group 4.
Hello.
Yeah, you're in group 4.
I am no, but I
I
don't
just
have any group
group
right now.
4.
Where is the room for? How do I get the room for?
I don't know. You're there.
No, but I can't
all right.
join.
Let me move you again, okay? Here you go. Oh,
Okay.
you should be there already. Okay, I'll move you to one room and then I'll move you again, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Now you should get an invitation.
Okay.
¿Sí lo ves?
Siguro.
fazer mamadeira todo dia, além de trabalhar como empacotadeira nas casas Bahia. Mama África, a minha mãe é mãe solteira e tem de fazer mamadeira todo dia, além de trabalhar como empacotadeira nas casas Bahia. Mama África tem tanto que fazer, além de cuidar neném. Além de
Is this Chico Cesar?
filhinho tem que entender. Mama África vai e
It's
vem.
Chico Cesar from Brazil,
Yeah, it is,
from
right?
northeastern Brazil.
Yep.
A minha mãe
I didn't make a whole playlist. I
Second
just
word.
it's a
I
collective
used to
one.
live in northeastern Brazil, and this is very familiar from the 90s.
Nice. All right. Perfect. Okay, we're gonna do 2 more times. I know this is a lot. Okay, the second what are conditions we need in place for this to thrive? So we're thinking about sustainability, but also what systems, what ideas, what things need in place. So the rooms are open.
no ritmo de vida de mama. Mama África, a minha mãe é mãe solteira e tem de fazer mamadeira todo dia, além de trabalhar como empacotadeira nas casas Bahia. Mama África, a minha mãe é mãe solteira e tem de fazer mamadeira todo dia, além de trabalhar como empacotadeira nas casas Bahia. Deve ser legal ser negão no Senegal, deve ser legal ser negão no Senegal, deve ser legal ser negão no Senegal, deve ser legal ser negão no Senegal. Mama África, a minha mãe é mãe solteira e tem de fazer mamadeira todo dia, além de trabalhar como empacotadeira nas casas Bahia. Mama África, a minha mãe é mãe solteira e tem de fazer mamadeira todo dia, além de trabalhar como empacotadeira nas casas Bahia. Mama África, a minha mãe, a minha mãe, a minha mãe. Obrigado, São Paulo. Obrigado. Muito obrigado.
Elevador é quase um templo, exemplo pra minar teu sono. Sai desse compromisso, não vai no desserviço. Se o social tem dono, não vai. Quem cede a vez não quer vitória. Somos herança da memória. Temos a cor da noite, filhos de todo açoite, fato real de nossa história. Se preto de alma branca pra você é um exemplo da dignidade, não nos ajuda, só nos faz sofrer.
Welcome back. All right, the torture is almost finished. Done good.
I was alone.
Yeah, all right. Last question is what is in our hands? So that means us in this room. What is in our hands to create this? What resources, people you know, things you know, processes you know, and what can you do to create this? Things that you can test with others? it out.
Sai desse compromisso, não vai no desserviço. Se o social tem dono, não vai. Quem cede a vez não quer vitória. Somos herança da memória. Temos a cor da noite, filhos de todo açoite. Fato real de nossa história. Ei! Se preto de alma branca pra você é o exemplo da dignidade. Não nos ajuda, só nos faz sofrer. Nem resgata nossa identidade. Se preto de alma branca pra você é o exemplo da dignidade. Não nos ajuda, só nos faz sofrer. Nem resgata nossa identidade. Elevador é quase um templo, exemplo pra minar teu sono. Sai desse compromisso, não vai no desserviço. Se o social tem dono, não vai. Quem cede a vez não quer vitória. Somos herança da memória. Temos a cor da noite, filho de toda açoite. Fato real de nossa história.
Welcome back. How was it? How was it? Let's just let me stop the beautiful music here. Yeah, let's just any surprises or something you want to share that questions, surprises, ideas that came out of this, out of the whole process?
If I may, when you ask a question like what conditions need to be in place for this to thrive, I think it's a trick. Because if there are those conditions, means you already
Cínico.
had it coming, no? And I think precisely the whole point behind wanting to do this is that you do not have the conditions which you would like to have, and how you can do this in any conditions. That would be my
Hmm.
perspective.
I didn't mean it as a trick, but that is interesting.
No. I don't. I'm sorry. It's my Colombian way of
Oh.
talking. I'm not saying you were wanting to trick it, but it is one of those things when you start thinking, what needs to be in place? It's like actually you should be able to do something without anything being in place the way you think it should be in place.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, I mean, like I was working on a project where like our goal was like to do a big campaign to move people to action, but there was no audience on like any of our social media channels. So that was a condition we needed to reach people. And so that could have been very tactical, right? You just need to like get you know, pay for ads to build your audience, you know? So it's like really, you know, some of them are very tactical, rather than, you know, much bigger kind of ideas of like new laws or new constitution. Sharon says, I feel like considering this on a global scale is challenging and hard to move beyond abstract, for sure. So we're looking at it on a very people to people level, because yeah, what the last question of like what's in our hands, you know, that's key because we can get stuck in the big abstract. Anybody else had any kind of reflections or how the experience was for them?
I could share something, a theme that was coming up in some of my conversations, and then just feels very like present for me right now is just like the need for like time and spaces to reflect and slow down and like stillness, and just like to move out of like to balance like, yes, these are really urgent needs, like, and also like we really need to come to like a space of stillness to like really like listen and reset like our nervous systems.
I like that a lot. Yeah. On other kind of meetings, we were talking about like that need for like personal, like mourning and grieving, and in a way of like just like kind of getting to that process. Like maybe it's like the negotiating process of like, how should I react? And so on, no matter which side you're on, that is really, yeah. And obviously this is like rapid, you know, but I think the where we want to go from here in the Peace Design Lab is really to like think more deeply, and especially with people that are, you know, ready to kind of build that, right? So like, so there's an investment and a commitment to that. Yeah. Any other? I see Whitney and Fiona, you came in a little bit, you were there. And Jessica, we haven't heard from you too much.
Yeah, hi. Hey everyone. I think yeah, I also struggled a little bit just like feeling very broad and generic with my thoughts. And you know, I think it's just like a tension within myself of um wanting to identify something very specific and tangible that I can do, that I can see, that I can touch, because you know, I think, yeah, when we feel a little bit discombobulated, that's um I don't know, at least that's how I react by trying to like want to do something. And so yeah, just struggling a little bit with how to make these big ideas something that like that we can accomplish, that we can move the needle on, you know, creating this better reality. So yeah, so the dotted line there, still struggling with that.
Mm-hmm. And they say like one thing that trauma, and I think this has been traumatic, right? It's like a sudden, unexpected thing that has happened. That's what causes trauma, whether, you know, we're and we all react differently to it, but I think that's like the first thing it kind of takes away is our creativity or like ability to imagine. And so like being able to sit in that space, as Sarah mentioned, I think is important. And also kind of opening the door, for a little bit of light to come in and to see that there's, a destination for that space. Yeah, what else? We'll take a few more, and then I'll kind of close it up. I know we're running past time.
Yes, I just want to add in the power of friendship and ideas. Thinking on ideas is how we can imagine a new world. I mean, thinking on what we have, but also thinking of what comes next based on that things and those resources and those conditions that we already have. And in terms of what we have is friendship, or like this space, like a global meeting with people from different backgrounds, with different spaces. We're creating a friendship to become real those ideas that we have.
All right, thank you. Fiona?
It might be a little controversial, but I've also found it to be grounding to be in some of these elite or technical or like intelligent, like intelligentsia spaces, because in the face of so much uncertainty, I'm finding this need to have like sophisticated analysis of what's happening, informed analyses, and not just venting through opinion and feelings. There's a role for that. But I also want answers, or at least like scaffolding of how to process information from experts who have done this work way before me and will continue to do the work way after me. So I've been actually really grateful to have, my day job be about this crumbling infrastructure and like challenging it and reimagining it, et cetera, and learning from colleagues.
Yeah, and you missed some of the stuff we were, if you want to look on the Canva board and see some of the things we've been working on. Well, thank you. Whitney, do you have any last words?
I'll just share a deep appreciation for the space. I don't have anything to add, but it's been lovely to enter into this space with you all. And I really look forward to staying connected in friendship and seeing what emerges from this board. I'd love to stay in touch with how this all shakes out.
Yeah. So how it shakes out, well, kind of what we're, we also would love to, what we're kind of playing with, and we're gonna pull some things here and then have an like open invitation for people to participate. I think we've had over 100 people on different calls in the last month, and so I think like analysis and catharsis and kind of being in the space is good, because as Fiona said, like we need, when we don't have answers to our questions, that's also very traumatizing, and it can actually create like a ruthless worldview, because you're still like, what's the point? Like, I don't know what is next, or what is like, and create like nihilism, like I'm not going to have an answer, and there's no point to this. So I think having this like ability to be able to meet and to do some deeper analysis and really kind of, I would say, hone in on the collective wisdom. And so what I already started doing, and what we're going to do is move all of the different answers to the different petals, and then start creating some clusters. And I've done this, I don't want to say dozens of times. I don't know if I've done it hundreds of times with groups, and it's really, amazing like what comes out of it, because it's not the process, it's not what we write down, and it's not the clustering, it's a combination of all of that, of like how our shared wisdom. And so with that, it's open, and it's something that you can use and reflect, but what our hope is we have a few like platforms in a few ways. So our vision is to create a piece design lab, which is a process that we have that has 6 parts, and in the summary I'll introduce it more on the Medium blog, but the idea is that it goes from curious empathy, which is like the process of building some trust and community, to naming, which is the analysis, and then to imagining and co-design, and then co-creation or action and reflection. And it's not a linear process like design thinking, but it goes through this process where we could, but on a very specific topic, right? So we call it like the piece design challenge question. So it has to be very specific, like how might we create a model of, people to be collective action that is accessible, virtual, that, works with social movements, so it's very specific to like an issue, as opposed to like, how do we solve world hunger? That, that's not going to happen with, 20 people on a call. Maybe, I doubt it, but so I think you never know the power of piece design. But I think the goal is to get to a place where we actually like co-design something. So we have some, definitely some ideas, and we have a platform that's called Constellations. That's a combination of Monday.com and Canva. And so it's using a lot of these analysis tools that we've created and methodologies. And on Monday.com, they have parallel processes that are more of, let's just call them Excel sheets, basically, is what Monday, it's a CRM, it's a way to manage data. And so doing analysis, it helps to be able to like map out, if you do a power analysis, for example, or ecosystem, you can map out the different stakeholders according to different tags and metrics. And so you could actually measure success and measure the process. So when we think about like who can do this, like who's already doing this, who's like low hanging fruit, right? So, there's so many of us that have, been in this field and have experience and have expertise, but and are connected with people that are, frontline communities and working. And so what we really hope to do is build and shape and we don't have a title yet, but we could call it like constellations and catalysts. And the idea of bringing social groups or movements, and maybe you have a group, a social movement or a nonprofit or an organization, and perhaps you have the skills. And so being able to pair a person or a person that makes a team with a social movement or community, frontline community, through a process where they will get really concrete support, whether so I mean, coaching and accompaniment is like the transformative relational culture, but the actual of like, do they want to start a small business? I could think of Agenda Joven, which Mier and I are part, that we've been supporting in Colombia. There's 11 territories. One of them have like a beehive small business. Maybe they need 10 more hives. How do we find the funding to get 10 more hives so that the movement can be sustainable, right? How do we support them in like really concrete ways? Or it could be applying for grants, or it could be a strategic plan, or it could be a logo branding. There's a lot of ways to go, whatever the need is. And so connecting an individual or a team that they create with this group and going through a 6-month process to be able to support them in concrete ways. And we hope to, through that, be able to, look for some resources and funding to even that person or that group to like take a trip and to support, and building these people to people solidarity where like maybe we can't change all of, foreign aid, but we could support, and Sarah knows like the family that we helped with asylum, like, we weren't going to change our policy system, but we were able to help 6 people get asylum, that's a 3-year process in the United States. But then we were also able to use those skills and knowledge to connect many people doing the same work and support them and accompany them. And so then now 1,000 people that were in detention now have asylum because individuals. So it's a collective action of people doing very specific tasks together. But I think a process that's organized and supported is going to be the way, because I know, I didn't have a lot of money to support, they needed $25,000 to get out of detention, but I have friends with money, that were able to lend the money and they were already paid back. Right. And so we have resources and spaces that maybe time or communities or money or, networks that we can leverage for specific like organizations or social groups that are frontline communities that have been the end users, right? Those end beneficiaries. And so the goal is to really co-design something, and maybe you have somebody that you would like want to work with personally, right? And support that has been kind of dropped off because of funding. You know, maybe Sanjay's group is one of them, right? That needs that support. And I mean, I could see like Miet or Lina, who's works with Agenda Joven, or San, you know, when they're relying so much on this aid, and they have the skills, but it's like, how far can you spread that, right? To have a network of support. And another part of this is like, rather than like a fellowship program or a, you know, something where it's like a one leader that we exalt, our constellations has seats for up to 20 people per movement or organization. So that means that this is co-designed by the people too. And so the idea is to work with a team from each organization and the organization or the frontline community, the social movement, with a catalyst, a person that supports them through a process that where they also get support, and then they will be able to get to a place in 6 months of some kind of advancement, whether it's more funding, whether it's branding, whether it's uh, a strategic goal that they establish together and based on the needs of those people. And so that's kind of how we're envisioning something very tangible and something very tactical, that like together we could bring in our resources and knowledge. But there is the need for accompaniment for the people that are supporting, and accompaniment for the movements, and a place to organize. And so that's the vision. What it'll look like, how it'll look like, we're gonna hopefully right now we're gonna look in co-design. You know, I'm looking right now at cultural exchange. It's very interesting. Okay, yeah, let's definitely I mean, one of our hopes is to do a live hive where you know, is it in person, like drinks, or honeycomb cafe, or something to be able to connect. But Fiona, for sure, I'll reach out. But I think this is already happening, you know, at in certain places. But I think for me, when trust me, I get despair every single I don't want to say every day, but a few days a week. You know, I listened to C-SPAN for the Committee on Foreign Relations and the hearing, and it was like Sunday I was listening to that, and it was just like so depressing, like how far away people are. So I think we can't sit in that despair. And when I think of this, I'm like, okay, that's something I can do. I helped 6 people. It took me 3 years, but I had my friend Tarek, who's a lawyer, and Roman, who's a lawyer, and somebody's mother who had a lot of money that was able to donate, and it didn't, you know, didn't like affect them at all. And, you know, they got their money, you know, it's like I could do it. And it took 3 years. But guess what? Like, these people are living free in the United States and thriving and helping others. So it's like I could do that. And they're helping others. And I mean, it's crazy. Like, they connected me. The reason this all started with asylum was that they were in detention, and they said, hey, this other person in detention has a person like you, but she needs support. So they're the connectors, actually, right? So we're like, where are the resources come from? They were actually the resource. And then they really, like, this idea started a whole movement. And they've done a bunch of these. But Sanjay, I want to pass it to you, and then any closing comments, and we can definitely, you know, close it down.
Sorry, I thank you for inviting me to. No, this is very nice to sort of like come together and talk like this. And I think these are the things that are already creating this movement, whatever. And one of the things that makes me think a lot is maybe it's good to have like a very specific action to take. And I'll give you an example. What if, like, this is the first time I feel in Colombia I have a way to help you in the US to overthrow your government. Don't record that. I'm sorry. But no, I do feel like
Just kidding.
yeah,
NSA.
that's gonna close. I was just saying that as a joke. But I mean, if you give it a simple purpose, like, no, always everybody's thinking about it. For example, me here in Colombia, it's like, you guys, what do you need, and how can we help you? And it's like, okay, this time I say, what do you need, and how can we help you? because I think we know how to deal with our crisis because we've been in crisis always. And I do think that the crisis in the US is kind of pooping on all of us, but some in more case than another. But I do think that in a democracy, which might be destroying itself, but doesn't matter, there is this possibility of saying, no, this is not what I want. This is not what I want, and you do not lead me or whatever. And so I would say maybe it could be like it's like knowing where to do acupuncture in the system. And I would say maybe a good way of doing acupuncture in the system is in one of the sources of the problem, which is your president right now. And the people around him. So maybe that's where you should go. And maybe there's a simple thing to be done there. And it's like, for example, how can we get social media to shut down for a little while? No, like in the pandemic, we all got locked in for a little while and nature started to, it's so nice to see animals again and stuff like that. What if we turn off social media for a little while and see what happens? What happens to Musk? What happens to Zuckerberg and all of them, and to Trump and to the whole process of political communication. I don't know. I think it's like finding one thing might sound very big to shut down social media. I don't think it's so undoable. I think it's quite doable. But I think it's a question of how if it's finding one sort of like pressure point to start with. And thank you for doing this. This is what we do. And I also have other offerings to give, but maybe this is not the moment. So for now,
No,
thank
yeah, and I think like, yeah, we could, maybe you could write it in the notes, other offer, but we'll, we hope to, in a few weeks to do it again and be able to share more. But I think, there's no assumption that there's that the global south is the needs, and then that the global north has the answers. Obviously we don't. And I'm originally from Romania, and there's this funny like Instagram where the girl, she's like from the Balkan, she's like, if you're from Eastern Europe, it's like, will it get worse? It's always gonna get worse. It's always gonna be worse. This doesn't get, so it's like the assumption, of, my parents, I was born there, but we came to the United States, but it's like 40 years of tyranny. It's going to get much worse, and I think there's people that have lived this and walked this path. It's not like, oh, this is the first time anybody has experienced it, right? And actually, that just to, and I want to just close it off with anybody else who has comment, but this has been like a prescient thought of my head, is like, so this is, because I work in these places, and it's like, oh, this is what that despair feels like, of like thinking of, my Palestinian friends, and where it's like there's nothing. I mean, it doesn't feel like there's much to do. Like what, like, okay, we could do these small things, but so it's easy to kind of despair. And so it's like building that resilience is definitely like part of like, how do you bounce back? And that's what we have to learn from you, but not just like, oh, resilience because you suffered more. There's like knowledge and information and access to resources and people that, there's no assumption from me personally that there's I mean, this is an exchange, and I think it could be you coaching a group here. Like really, I mean, that they need it. So it's not, or supporting. So I think that that's where the beauty of this is that we're kind of starting from scratch, not making assumptions that, it's like, oh, get these like smart people to help these poor little people. Or tall people, but poor, But anyway, yeah, just to close off, yeah, so I see Fiona's, that's what my Southern colleagues have been saying. It's been much worse for much longer for most of the world, but the US. And they've remained resilient, hopeful, and building for a positive future to come. Exactly. And so we can glean a little bit of that. And we collectively thank you all for even being here, and I hope we can and like really, I think the idea of like accompany people in the US through this is going to be, the need too, where we don't feel alone or in despair. We can all be in misery, it's like we can, it's like my friend says about marriage. He's like, yeah, marriage or having kids, it's like you're in a pool and you're drinking your margarita and everybody's happy, but you know, it's like, come on in, but the pool is full of acid, by the way. But it's like, come on in, it's great. So we could, misery loves company. But anyway, any last thoughts? I want to close it off. Miette, if you want to share something, want to.
I just want to add that it's very powerful to have a global meeting in different time zones and different regions of the world and being together, trying to imagine a new world based on what has happening. And if we stay together, we are a stronger force of change, of power, of strategies, of whatever you want. Those, I mean, those ideas, those that friendship, those relationships, the power between people to people power is possible and it's happening right now. So it's very beautiful to see that, like making real what we dream. And we will continue. I mean, the conversation should continue, and that conversation should be translated also into actions. What comes next after this? Monica have said a lot of dreams that we have as Activate Labs. So please join us when we will send the code.
Yeah, so we'll be sending out an email with this, and also just there'll be like an evaluation or a place to like kind of give ideas for the next Hive or for other kind of gatherings where it's maybe even doing offerings or trainings or spotlighting on something. So there'll be, you know, different formats beyond the Hive where people can share, you know, their knowledge, expertise, experience, and also just community, you know, goodwill. But anyway, thank you everybody so much, and we really